Welcome to the Free Cities podcast. My name is Timothy Allen, and this is the official podcast of the Free Cities Foundation. Hello, and welcome to episode number 90 of the Free Cities podcast. Well, in a couple of weeks, I am off on an expedition to Mongolia, so I've been editing a few episodes all in one go to automatically publish whilst I'm away. Now, normally I write these intros straight after I listen back to each episode, but this time round I thought I'd try and repurpose one of our AIs to see if it can offer up an intro for me. It's an experiment, though, I promise. I'd like to keep abreast of new trends, of course, and I'll always record my own thoughts in these intros. Anyway, it was quite good, according to my AI agent. Quote, "This conversation revolved around the intersection of decentralized governance, privacy, security, and economic development. The speakers discussed the importance of preserving privacy and security in decentralized markets, whilst incentivizing good behavior. They also explore the limitations of democracy as the sole form of governance and the potential for autonomous cities to emerge. Additionally, they examined the economic situation in various countries, including Argentina, and the impact of inflation on the middle class. Finally, they touched on the creation of free cities and economic zones as a means of disruption." Pretty good, in fact. That is what we spoke about. It did, of course, forget to mention who my guest actually was. That's Lea Petrášová. Lea's what I would call a cypherpunk, privacy advocate, probably best known as the co-founder and CEO of Vexl, which is a peer-to-peer Bitcoin trading network, which, as you'll hear in this podcast, is morphing into so much more than just that. Lea's also an old-school digital nomad. She's got stories from all of those places you've probably never been before. So I love speaking to her. I'm a traveller at heart, of course, myself, and I love this conversation. Hope you do too. Contact me at podcast@free-cities.org with your questions and or recommendations. And many thanks once again to those of you in the Value for Value ecosystem who've been streaming us sats. I did assume they were all coming from the Fountain app, but I must be wrong on that one because they're not showing up on our Fountain page. So if you're someone who's using a different platform than Fountain, please drop me a line and let me know. I'm very much happy to mention any other platforms here, and I certainly want to try them out for myself. And obviously, whilst I'm sat here creating our very own strategic Bitcoin reserve with all these streamed sats, you might be best advised to just sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with Lea Petrášová. I'll tell you what, then let's just start with, can you kind of introduce yourself? And you still run Vexl, right?
Yes.
Okay, right. You better just tell us what Vexl is and first. I mean, I know what it is, but
Sure.
People listening won't.
All right. My name is Lea, and a couple of years ago I co-founded, and I'm still leading a mobile app called Vexl. Maybe wondering, the audience might be wondering where the name came from, and it's from German word wechseln, which means to exchange. And maybe a funny backstory to that, how we came up with the name. During the communist times, it was very hard to get foreign currencies and foreign goods here. So we had this layer of agents of grey economy, and they were usually appearing on borders with Germany, typically, and or like really frequented touristic places. So people who could get in touch with foreigners, and they would be exchanging these currencies and foreign goods, and they were tolerated. But not legal. And basically how it went, so you would meet these people, and while they were approaching you with word Vexl, like exchanging. So that's where the name came from, Vexlak. And we are basically honoring these agents of grey economy because they were directly improving the lives of like common people who were not able to get the goods, the better goods from the Western Bloc. So that's actually that's an anecdote how we came up with the name, and the app is basically a marketplace which is very private, very anonymous, and it's peer-to-peer. And when I say peer-to-peer, I really mean peer-to-peer, because there is no one in the middle. There is no escrow. There is not us as a service provider in the middle of the trades. And the main objective of this marketplace is giving its users an option how to obtain or sell Bitcoin as it was intended. That means without KYC, and that means peer-to-peer.
So if you're not using escrow, then how do you stop people, I don't know, ripping people off, basically? It seems, escrow is the most common way to do that. You would hold the Bitcoin until it's somehow proved that the transaction is legitimate and is occurring, and then you go for it. Or have you just left that for the free market now? It
is a free market, but I think the biggest innovation of the app is its reputation model. And what we basically did, we attempted, and I dare to say succeeded, to bring the real world reputation into an app. So what we do in the app, we actually connect you with the people in your social circle and the people of in the social circle of those people. So that means like second degree contacts. We are basing that on a contact list of the phone, but still it's very technically very anonymous, very private, and I don't want to bore you with details of the technical solution, but we really took care of that not even us as the service providers are able to find out what is being traded and how, and in between whom in the app. So basically, the workflow is very, very easy. The app is super user-friendly. It's something I'm very proud of. You come to the app, you join the network, and you can see the offers from your friends and friends of their friends. So, and basically, when you see an offer, you don't know who posted that offer. You can reveal that to each other later in the end-to-end encrypted chat if you wish to. What you see, and what is the most important thing, is the number of common contacts, common friends you have, and who these people are. So you know in which social circle, social bubble you're kind of like moving within. And this proved to be really effective way how to incentivize people to behave properly on the platform.
Well, it works like that on Twitter, for example. If someone sends you a request,
yes,
and you see that they're followed by you normally accept, or LinkedIn is the same. Yeah, that makes total sense to me.
But with the exception, that usually the people you have in your contact list are the people you really know. So, and you don't give your phone number to just anyone. And the real world reputation you have out there, you're building that for the whole life. You cannot craft it. And people don't want to be called names, in the circle of their friends. So it really has proven to work perfectly in terms of incentivizing the buyers and sellers to behave in a proper way.
And you said that at some point in the transaction, you can actually choose to know who it is you're transacting with, because that would probably be quite important. Yes. And does people have an individual rating score based on anything else? So
no.
If I'm brand new and I come into this ecosystem and I want to make a trade with someone, and I've not really, maybe if I'm new to the whole world of Bitcoin, I may not have many friends in common. Is there still a way for me to prove myself?
Yes, there is. And it's still the social reputation, the real world reputation. So what would happen typically? You would get in touch with someone who is buying or selling, whatever you intend to do. And with that person, you would have one common friend, or two common friends. And one of those people would be probably me, because you are new to the network, and or maybe you're in a different city, or you may not know many people. What happens typically, and you might reveal the identity, but it's like the counterparty might not know you because you are second-degree contact of that counterparty. So what happens? That counterparty asks me, like, is this a credible contact to trade with? Shall I do it? And you might do the same if you are not quite sure.
Okay, sounds good. And you better tell me why you think it's so important then that we have non-KYC Bitcoin exchanges, because it's almost certainly going to be one of the most important aspects of Bitcoin in the future, I would imagine, because it's an open ledger, and even I realize that it doesn't take long for an algorithm to work out who you are based on completely anonymous transactions, unless you can, change the current system we have somehow. So what's your view on it?
It's a very, very good question. Why I work on KYC Bitcoin is because I think that's the real Bitcoin, and it depends on how you look at it. To maybe give you the wider perspective. Bitcoin is supposed to be a parallel financial system, and if you want, to allow free market to emerge, you need this parallel financial system, because you can't really have free market today in today world. Like, that's impossible, and it's getting increasingly more and more hard. So I treat Bitcoin or I look at Bitcoin as an entry ticket to this parallel financial system. And if you want to have this access and be free in that and interact and, for example, start a company or be buying goods freely and so on, you can't have this identity of yours tied to your purchase of Bitcoin or to amount of Bitcoin you hold and so on. And this is the only way how to get this is the Bitcoin without KYC and without all these AML measures and so on. You don't want to. So it's basically from my perspective, this is the only way how you can really let the free market emerge. And what happened in our app, which is fascinating. Maybe a little bit of backstory. When we launched, we were worried that there won't be enough offers. Well, the problem was people started using the app for anything. People are selling services, people are selling goods, or people are trying to hire people to do something for Bitcoin. So we actually had to divide the marketplace into categories now, which is, for me, it's such a tremendous success in the way we allowed a circular economy. That's success I haven't foreseen at all, or I was hoping for, but in much later in the future. And this in this development, Bitcoin is a tool. I might be a weird Bitcoiner, but I don't care that much about Bitcoin. If tomorrow there will be a better tool for this entry ticket to a parallel financial system, then yeah, I'm all in. I will just jump. I will ditch my Bitcoin. I will jump on it. But so far, it does not seem that it's going to happen anytime soon.
Are you planning then in the future? Because this network you're creating here is mainly about people getting in onto the Bitcoin network. It's kind of like an on-ramp in a way. Are you interested in privacy in just very quick and easy peer-to-peer transactions? Because something like what the Lightning Network's doing, because obviously what you're doing is it must be a relatively slow process. I've used peer-to-peer networks before, and you put your offer up and you basically have to wait for someone to accept it, and it could be a week, if you never know. So do you see some kind of future where you're more concerned with the actual privacy of faster transactions?
Yeah. To be completely honest, scaling Vexl is very hard. It is hard. We've seen it here in Czech Republic. It took us maybe 9 months until it really took off. Right now, the social network is so dense that if you join, I dare to say that if you join today, you would be able to trade Bitcoin by the end of the day. But that's not the case in Germany yet, in Spain yet, in Italy yet, let alone Global South. So given how local Vexl is, that's our biggest challenge, how to scale it. And the biggest obstacle is actually, basically explaining the users and the Bitcoiners that, you want non-KYC Bitcoin. You don't want anything else. You want non-KYC Bitcoin that you hold in your self-custody. That's it. And that's important. And, people not caring, that's the biggest, my biggest fear for success of Vexl in the future. And I think future will show if we were right, and these tools will be increasingly needed, or they will die out.
My personal opinion on that is they'll be needed, but it will always be it'll always be a minority of people. But I don't think most people care that much about privacy. Maybe with Bitcoin, because it's a really obvious public ledger, it might trigger them to think more deeply about it. But I'm not sure most people care. But there will always be a percentage of people who do, and they'll go to those places to use it. Yeah.
I hope so. At the same time, every new regulation, every new AML process, every new KYC process, it's a great marketing for us. That's, I don't have to do anything. It's just like it's selling itself, because there is this tendency in the society that people tend to understand that, they are being cooked alive, basically, they can't really transact freely anymore. It's not that easy. And I think this trend will just get worse and worse. And that might be, I still think the people who will care about peer-to-peer or privacy, that won't be majority. But I think this group of people will grow in time.
What is the setup, the legal setup here? Because obviously, especially recently in the news, you see a lot of people getting, called out by governments on this kind of stuff. And I understand the model. The model is we are not transmitting, we are not doing, all we are is a place for people to meet. But does that hold up well legally and into the future? What do you think? Because
I hope so.
Yeah.
Well, basically, Vexl is a non-profit, and it will remain non-profit. There is no other way for us to do it, to offer this service. And basically, if you really zoom out, it's a Tinder for Bitcoiners. It's a social network / advertisement board with privacy on steroids. That's what it is. Even if it does not hold up, it's an open source software. So I hope that if I won't be doing it and it won't have me as a CEO, there will be someone else who will run it. That was, of course, one of the motivations why we decided to open source everything about the app.
But how is KYC legislation in Czech Republic then?
Horrible, like anywhere else. Have you ever heard of good KYC legislation or good KYC measures?
I don't know, actually. No, probably not. I don't know. What do you think then about the fact that KYC is necessary to a certain degree? Do you sympathise with people that want to have some degree of KYC? Like, say you're a state or a government and you want to kind of, implement some kind of KYC. Are you against all of it, or do you see that there's a place maybe for some of it?
I'm a radical in this. First off, I consider governments to be very aggressive and oppressive entities. Typically, most of them. And to be honest, if I were a government, of course, I would do hardcore KYC on even purchase of bread, so it's in their best interest to do that. Of course, that's clear. I don't sympathize. I consider that to be oppressive and intrusive, and of course also based on money, basically, because if you really look at the statistics of how much money the KYC and AML practices cost us and how effective they are, it's just like, it doesn't make any sense. So no, to answer your question, I do not sympathize.
I think most people would. The argument from the other side is mostly, but what about money? People that are doing something wrong, bad, scammy, whatever. So what's the counter argument from your side to that? Is it that actually the data shows that it's not very effective?
Well, my argument is that crime, there was always a crime, there will be a crime, and actually, if you are a criminal and you want to use Bitcoin for your activities, you are not a smart criminal. That's not actually the best, really cream de la cream of what you would choose as the means of transaction. Yeah. So, and typically it's not Bitcoin, it's not Ethereum to launder money. That's not how you do it.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of tend to agree with you. I think criminals are going to be whatever you do, and actually they'll find a way, to be honest. And why penalise the majority when a small minority is actually going to find a way around it anyway?
That's exactly how I feel about it. Yeah. That majority is being punished because of the minority that you cannot really eradicate in any way.
What's your view then on the not too distant future of, well, let's say governments then? I mean, do we see governments on the whole getting bigger, stronger, larger, more intrusive, or do you see some kind of, well, there's obviously a counter force at work. What's your view on the future? Where are we going with all this?
I like to see the world as a supermarket, and you can go around and just pick what suits you best. And I like this trends where governments are trying to compete, for you. They're for you as a customer, I dare to say. And this is an approach that I really like because then the governments are directly incentivized to keep you as a customer, to please you, not holding you as a hostage. So this is something that brings hope to my view, and I hope this will be an increasing trend. Unfortunately, there is the counter trend to that, and that's what's happening now in the Western world is that the governments that you want to leave because they don't serve you well anymore don't want to let you go, and it's getting increasingly difficult to be able to leave, and increasingly expensive. Try leaving Germany with your company right now, the exit tax and everything is crazy. And this is again something that will discourage a great amount of people, I think, from actually looking at the world and thinking about the fact that I might be treated much better someplace else. For me, the biggest moment when I realized, biggest realization of this world as a supermarket view was when I switched. I terminated my contract with this Czech state insurance company, and I shopped around and I went for a foreign insurance company, reputable one from Luxembourg, and I ever since I made the switch, every time when I go to a doctor, I'm thanking my past self that I did so, and I cannot believe I haven't done it earlier, because I'm paying less for much better services all around the world, minus USA, of course. So, and I hope more people will come to this realization that they don't actually have to waste their money on shitty services. Sorry for the term, but they actually can go around, look around, and get something much better than that.
There's some talk in the UK at the moment of increasing the difficulty for financially leaving, and. When that happens, I just think how miserly that is of a government. The word miserly. How cruel of them that presented with competition, their answer is not to compete harder. It's to put legislation to stop you competing.
Yeah, hold you hostage harder.
Yeah, in one sense though, that's at least a good sign that it's happening.
Yes, that's true. There's one point to view it.
Yeah. So I take it are you a digital nomad?
Yeah, I travel most of the time of the year. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of Czechs that I meet are doing that. You're Czech, aren't you?
I'm Slovak.
Oh, Slovak.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. But I've been living in Prague for decades.
Right. But a lot of people from this part of the world seem to. There seems to be a hub here, actually, of people like yourself who are very clued in on flag theory and not just traveling for the sake of it, but actually traveling for reasons, looking for the best deals and this kind of stuff.
I believe it has something to do with the past. You know, we had 40 years of communism here. Czechs and Slovaks, Czechs more, we tend not to trust our government. You know, we had so many in the past, it's far from stable here. It's far from stable. And during the communist time, we had this mentality: you have to do something yourself because no one is going to. If you wanted to have a better life, so I guess that's one thing that is particular, like for this part of the world, that we are not really waiting for the government to do anything for us. Like we pack our stuff and we leave and do things for ourselves.
Interestingly, though. I was saying we've just been to Liberland. We've just come back from Liberland, and we travelled through, Croatia, Slovakia, Serbia, a few places. And I've been travelling with a Czech guy, and he's moved back to Prague from the UK. And by the looks of it, the setup here in Czech Republic is not too bad. Tax seems to be okay. The government does seem to leave you alone on the whole. I don't know. Is that fair to say?
Well, I mean, it could be worse for sure. It could be worse, but just because it could be worse, that does not hold me from searching for better. So I'm lucky enough not to have this kind of sentimental feelings towards Prague or so on. I mean, I love the city. It has wonderful infrastructure. It has great value for money ratio, and summer here is a blast. So I really like it. I like to return here, but I mean, for example, the level of bureaucracy here, it's crazy. And if I can go somewhere where I don't have to deal with this bureaucracy, why would I? Why would I stay here for most of the year? So yes, I totally agree. It is a great place to live, but from my perspective, I can do better. So I left.
My issue with mobility, and voting with your feet, as people like to say, is that it's not as easy as it could be when you start having a family, when you start having friends, relations living close to you. Is that something you experience, or are you free as a bird? Do you do whatever you want to do, or You're absolutely right. It's something I contemplate a lot about. I'm not. I don't have family myself. Like my own children or so. But it's something I'm really thinking about. Like if I'm deciding to stay I'm actually. I'm actually making an audition to the best place to live, but if I decide to have children, to live there for most of the year. I'm in my mind. I'm kind of I'm going towards having two bases. One of them probably would be Dubai. Second, I'm considering Buenos Aires, but I'm not decided, and it will be a very interesting and also difficult question to resolve for me in the future if I decide to have children. Can I dissect that? What are the pros and cons of both of those? You said maybe Dubai or maybe Buenos Aires. What do you know about either of those two?
I spent in both of them quite significant amount of time. So which one to start with? What I like about Buenos Aires, you can very easily obtain the second citizenship. So that's something I would totally go for. It's a fairly cheap passport in terms of like it's very easy to get it, or one of the easiest in the world, I dare to say. But except of that, if you're earning anything else than pesos, you are actually very well off. For past 40 years, it has been like this. But it still has very good living standards. That's what you can do. And the middle class is still very, very strong there. But when I was traveling there and I heard about 200% inflation, you're expecting basically Senegal, or like Senegal after war. But this is not what's happening. It's actually fairly safe given it's in Southern America. It has great living standards. It has this. It's basically Europe. It's not Latin America. I wouldn't like to live in Latin America. That's not something. It's great for vacation, not good for living. And it's the healthcare, private of course, is very good. People are very welcoming towards immigrants. So those would be my objections. There is a lot of culture. There is beautiful nature. It's close to the sea. It's far from any possible conflict in Europe, and it's so far from anything that actually. I'm thinking about what could happen in Argentina, and if they don't attack Falklands again, I cannot understand. I cannot really expect any other conflict, to go there. So it's like from this perspective, it's a safe country.
Okay, I want to ask you some questions then about Argentina. Is there currently 200% inflation there?
It's less, and
was there at some point?
Yes, it was. And
were you there during periods of 200% inflation?
I was. I cannot remember the exact rate of the inflation when I was there, because we have so many metrics how to measure inflation. So, but it was definitely over 100%. And the increase on the price just got slower when I was there, but it was still like on the rise.
And how do local people deal with that on a day-to-day basis? Like, what's the best strategy if you're an Argentinian earning pesos in Argentina? Because we're seeing the beginnings of it here, aren't we? We've had 15-20% inflation. I know that all of my friends, no matter what their income bracket, everyone is saying they have less money at the end of the month now. Everyone, without fail. So what when it gets bad, like in Argentina, what's the strategy of locals, your average local, to deal with it?
It was fascinating to me because, as I said, like there is still quite they are getting poorer, but like generally over time, but still there is quite a strong middle class, and then you start noticing it. Like people are hustling; they are really hustling because everyone wants to earn dollars. If you can get your hands on dollars, you are trying to get dollars. That's the first thing I would note. It really struck me when I saw Airbnb, and I accidentally went from homes to experiences. The things people would be selling there, you wouldn't believe. Like the market, it's like if you can cook, you invite people to your home and teach them to cook. If you can dance tango, you teach them tango. If you have degree in arts, you take them to museum. Whatever to do just to get your hands on dollars, like whatever. Then and it's not just this. Like you don't have to be qualified. Like people would be just like, oh, that was my favorite one. There was a person selling experience named, how was it? Buenos Aires for curious people. And I opened it because he had like thousands of this like reviewed. So might have been like triple of what he actually sold. It was not cheap though. And it was basically walking through Buenos Aires with the person who was chatty. So, you have this like very entrepreneurial mindset of the locals. So that's the first thing, how they survived. It's how I perceive. And also like you have these like flea markets and like people like doing stuff, selling that, and really like, or you're in a taxi, person is immediately upselling you something. So they're very, very entrepreneurial. Second thing, the people who actually earn more money, if you're working for a corporate, you can get paid in USD or you get paid in pesos. If you get paid in pesos, you usually have this review of salary like 4 times a year, which is like quite unusual compared to Europe. And these people are, they tend to earn more and have like extra than just like to cover their basic needs. And they are very used to investing, they just like immediately switch that to anything really, like typically like often stocks. So that's another way how they survive and how they are able to thrive. And of course, if you're just working, you're trying to work for a corporate and being paid in dollars because, that's probably the best future you could get there.
Do you see much Bitcoin adoption there on account of the inflation?
So I was expecting more. There are interesting initiatives. I have not encountered much of those though. Not really.
What about stablecoins? Dollar stablecoins?
Yeah, that's actually much more interesting to them because, they are interested in dollars. But, if you're Argentinian, volatility of Bitcoin, it's too much of you. You cannot really save. There's one thing I wanted to mention, like the inflation they have right now, it's nothing compared to what they had 20, 30 years ago. When the stories I heard, it was just it was unbelievable. People buying the tokens for metro in the evening after the shift, they were paid daily. They got their salary and they ran to a metro station in order to buy the tokens for metro because that's what held the value. So compared to that, what they have today is a joke. So
do those tokens last forever? Do they?
I don't think so. It's not like forever, but for them, living
6 months, 1 month, maybe.
Imagine you couldn't if you get the salary, you couldn't buy basically nothing the next day. So Metro token is actually still better than having the fiat.
Well, when your money is, you always tend towards the hardest form of money or the most useful form of money, don't you? And if your money's not holding any value, tokens, cigarettes, whatever.
Exactly.
Exactly. Wow, that's incredible. So what I'm surprised is, because I've been to El Salvador a few times and I saw stable coins really being used there. Obviously, it's a slightly different situation, but I'm surprised there wasn't the stablecoin Bitcoin wallet thing in Argentina. It's not taking off. And for example, what stable coins do you have in Argentina?
They are basically using Tether on Tron.
Tether on Tron.
Yeah, so basically that's what they are doing. They're sending dollars around. Also, remittances are a good survival strategy for them. Everyone who can goes and earns money in Uruguay, for example. So, or any place around, there are not many countries in the Southern America that are economically worse. That's not probably the best claim because Argentina still has pretty strong economy. I think they're second after Brazil right now. So, but imagine what they could have been if they didn't have that overly regulated market. What was interesting when I was there, it was this January, I believe. And, the housing in Buenos Aires, it was heavily regulated, So basically, and also with the inflation rate, it didn't make any sense for the homeowners actually rent the place for a year because in the end of the year, for the same price, you wouldn't get, anything. And not that many people or not majority can touch dollars. So what happened when Milei came to the office, one of the first things he deregulated this market. And immediately, it was from 1 week to another, you could see it on Airbnb also, the offer of the apartments doubled and the prices went 20% down, immediately. So that was interesting to see for sure. Yeah. By the way, another tactics that you just reminded me of that. As I was speaking about these agents of great economy, these Vexlaks, you still have full streets of them. Like they're basically earning money on spread and between pesos and dollars, and this is probably usually the best exchange rate you can get.
That must be risky though, being one of those guys when you're holding local currency and dollars
in
your hand. How do you do that?
No idea. I could not.
I don't understand how you could if you're talking about your value of your peso changing from day to day. You don't want to get caught holding the bag, do you?
I really...
There must be a strategy that they use.
Yeah. That was one of my goals, to actually interview one of these Vexlaks, but I didn't succeed.
What do they call them in Spanish?
Oh, there's a word, and I forgot.
Not something like Vex something.
No. They use cambio.
Oh yeah, cambio.
Cambio. So, but
that's right.
they have names for the exchange offices. They use word. I think it's cava, which is a cave. No, cueva. Sorry, cueva. That's a cave. So that they use for exchange offices. And usually, these exchange offices are like super funny, because it's like I don't know. Imagine a shop with a sports bear. And
with what? A sports bar?
Sports bear.
Bear,
like sports clothes.
Oh, sportswear, sorry.
Yeah. And they would take you to the back and give you the best exchange rate. And it's like this very small lady just like dealing dollars in the back of her like super small shop, which is like 2 square meters or something. So that's funny. That was interesting. But when I was there, I would be actually using Western Union, because for some reason they have by far the best exchange rate. The only problem is that you have to stand the line like for 3 hours, and you don't with the prices increasing constantly and the currency devaluating. You don't want to exchange like 500 euros. You exchange 100 and then you come next week and exchange 100 because the amount is like really different.
So wow. So you that was your strategy was cash, was it? Cash dollars?
Yes.
Why not stablecoins? That would have seemed like a better option. Not enough people accepting them.
There are ways how to pay. There are payment systems how to access or how to pay with crypto, and they're actually quite blooming, these services. The problem is they're often connected to Mercado Pago, which is they are like it's I'm thinking of what to compare it to. It's basically money business provider. It's just that you can pay with it. You can like order things. You can pay with QRs. It's basically like.
Is it like WeChat in China?
Not really. It's I'm trying to find an equivalent here. Could be. We don't have some. I don't think we have such a strong payment provider. But basically, they have a KYC process, and you need an Argentinian or Southern American passport or ID to be able to join.
Were you there when Milei got elected?
Afterwards.
What's your opinion on that guy?
I try to refrain from opinion, because he's been
right
in the office for 6 months. I mean, generally, well, he is extravagant. I let him that. I tend to agree with most of his opinions, but for me, it's not whatever he does, except maybe the regulation. It does not really speak to me, because the tax is still crazy, still unpredictable. There is a world taxation, but and this is not changing. This is not really happening. Also, he is not really liberal in a way you would expect him to be with the Western eyes, because I don't know. He's very he's very much anti-abortions. He has this view of anti-abortions politics, and also he's very much against drug use. So he claims to be a libertarian or anarcho-capitalist, but not much really in the practice. So future will show it was interesting to see the society being really polarized by him, because Buenos Aires is super leftist. So he was hated. I've experienced those protests, like million people in a street. It's just like,
how is Buenos Aires really leftist then?
It's it's the capital, so it's like.
What do you mean, socialist or
leftist? I mean, very.
Are we talking the sort
woke,
of middle classes?
Let's say
woke.
Yeah.
I think that's a better explanation, because they don't. I don't think those people tend to be leftist thinking when it comes to economics.
But the young ones, yes.
Yeah.
Young ones, they don't remember the inflation of the 90s and inflation of the early 2000s. So they are very, very leftist, even in their economic thinking. Yes. It was very interesting to me to see. And but if you have people who are, for example, entrepreneurs, like taxi drivers, I've never ever have I once met someone who wouldn't cheer for Milei. Once. So he is definitely a polarizing figure. Now, for me, I visit Buenos Aires as a tourist. I would never become a resident there in terms of being also a taxpayer. I wouldn't do that. I would be interested in the passport, though, for sure. And
do you know the procedure? And how much it costs?
So you can buy it. I'm not sure about the exact numbers. Also, it changes a lot. But basically, they give it to you after 2 years of temporary residence, and then you need 2 years of permanent residency, and then you can just get it by naturalization, which is very straightforward.
And in your opinion, the advantage of that would just be to have a place to go if you really didn't want to be where you were. Not anything else. No other reason.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's far away from I have a Schengen passport. I won the jackpot. So I wouldn't be interested in a second Schengen passport. And if something, I would be really interested in the passport of United Arab Emirates. This is, from my perspective, creme de la creme of passports.
Is it?
But that's impossible to get.
Is it?
Yes.
You have to be an Emirati to get it, do you?
It's, even if you married there, you would not get it. You have to make a significant contribution to UAE, and every submission is signed by Sheikh himself. So it's very rare, almost unheard of, to get.
Is that Dubai or is that all of the Emirates?
All of the Emirates. Yeah. But it's a very strong passport. They have visa-free access to Russia and to USA, to Iran and Israel. It's from
Well, it's very interesting, isn't it? Because what they've done in the UAE is look after their own intensely. And you can see that when you're there. And if you're an outsider, you realize just how much you're treated differently in, say, Europe. It's very, very different. It's almost turned on its head. And it's almost considered wrong or evil to be that focused on your own people. Have you noticed that? The liberal mind would look at, the way they treat outsiders there. Not in the sense that everyone's welcome. Everyone's welcome to bring themselves to the UAE and work, and that's great. But there is a ceiling through which it's very difficult to pass if you want to become part of Emirati society, or even rise to the top of a certain industry. You can't really, and that's because they've decided, right, this is our place. We're going to control this place. We're going to stay in charge, because they're a super small minority as well. The Emiratis, I think they're 10 or 20%, aren't
yes,
they?
15 to 20, I think. I believe. Yeah. Depends on the particular emirate.
Yeah. I mean, it's an amazing model. I'd say it's the model that has shown you what the truth is of governance. And certainly when you compare it to the way that the West is governing now, it's not. You're a customer in the in the UAE, as a resident.
So I'm not sure if I remember the story right, but there is another interesting aspect to this, and that's do you know the story how Dubai was built, how it actually got to where it is today? So
maybe, probably, but
it's like TLDR, and I apologize to our audience if I make the mistakes, but I read the book quite some time ago. But basically, what happened? Because in Dubai there was nothing. Like 100 years ago, there was nothing for stone houses. That's it. And they started with the port, where they and Iran had problems in the early 20th century, and in Bandar Abbas, that used to be the major port in the for the goods, and for the pearls and gold and so on. And if a state has a problem, well, they tax and they introduce more and more bureaucracy and more administration. And Dubai the ruler of Dubai saw the opportunity, and he said, like, yeah, okay, come here. You don't have to pay taxes. And this is the story how Dubai started. And it was always like this. They made this like maybe with few exemptions. They had this very pro-merchant attitude, because they realized they have nothing else. Like, who would want to live there? It's unbearable most of the year, you know? So, and what is interesting, in 70s, they had another ruler, descendant of this original one, who had in mind this like great development of Dubai. He was dreaming of like people in London waking up reading about Dubai, and people in New York waking up reading about Dubai, and he was called megalomaniac, of course. And he started building roads, he started building airports, he started building like ports, and they were always kidding him because there were no cars, there was no electricity, there was no water, there was no telephone cables. It was 70s or like early 80s in Dubai. And first, for this development, he was borrowing money from, I guess it was, I believe it was Kuwait or Qatar, I guess Qatar. And this is actually, there's a funny backstory how Emirates was born, but because when Qatar stopped flying Qatar Airways through Dubai airport, because, well, Dubai got increasingly popular, or started getting increasingly popular, they just started Emirates. So that's, we bought a couple of planes from Pakistani Airlines and just start Emirates, which is one of my favorite stories. But I want to say something else. So basically, they had this conflict with Qatar, because Qatar started to be jealous, and they saw Dubai actually endangering them, you know, and being one of the hegemons on the peninsula. So what the ruler did, he didn't go and borrow money to Qatar. He started borrowing them from the old families, from the old tribes in the UAE, usually descendants of Persians who started the settlements back in the early early 20th century, when they started the settlements for their in the port. So the ruler, had very close relationships with them, very personal relationships, and these relationships are until this day still quite maintained. So that's another important thing. And it might seem like this ruler of Dubai is like totally detached from reality, but it's not true. He's actually well known for being very attentive and being very controlling when it comes to like services, for example, that they provided to the citizens and to the immigrants and so on. And so, as I said, he started borrowing money from these tribes because he wanted to keep it inside. And the subsidies these old families are getting up until this day are actually the heritage of this. They are still being paid these like thank you notes. And the most successful companies and most successful families in UAE, actually this one that in the 70s or early 80s borrowed money to Dubai ruler to invest in infrastructure, to invest in airport, to the second port, and so on. So there is this like very old connection in between the ruling class and the families that now are the elite of the nation.
Well, I mean, my view on the ruling families in Dubai is the fact that you have ruling families is one of the most important aspects of their success, I think. Because, and I don't know whether this is your experience from going to and from Dubai, there's no politics in the UAE. It doesn't exist there. So you don't have to deal with short-term thinking. You don't have to deal with this turnover of ideas.
Exactly.
Is that? Do you think
Absolutely.
that's true? Yeah.
And I welcome it. And as I said, there is nothing in Dubai, and they are very well incentivized to be predictable in this way. And you said there is no politics, but I would say there is policy. And the policy is the same as it was in early 20th century. And that is, what is good for merchant is good for Dubai. And this is there are very few places in the world when you can get this. And another fascinating thing is, you have the other countries around. You have Saudi Arabia, you have Qatar, and so on, competing with United Arab Emirates. For example, for workforce, for all the Indians, for all the Pakistanis, and now immigrants as well. And that's great, and I really welcome this. I hope there will be, as I said, more competition like this. What is interesting about United Arab Emirates, all the 7 Emirates are competing with each other, and then inside of the Emirates themselves, you have free zones competing. So the amount of competition and the amount of options for you to choose from is just incomparable to anything else in the world. So it's a very interesting story for me. Of course, there are many things that could be, where we can be resentful towards Dubai for, but I dare to say there are not many places in the world with higher and more predictable economic freedom than you would get there.
Well, obviously, that's where a lot of free city projects are aiming at exactly the same. Well, not exactly the same setup, but the sentiment would be the same. The sentiment would be, here are the rules, sign a contract to say you agree with them, and then that's it. Now go and do your thing. And choose which set of rules you want. And I'm surprised it doesn't already exist, I must admit.
Me too, actually, yeah.
But you would predict that it will, because it's a very simple model. And if you run a business, or if you're an entrepreneur, or if you're someone that wants to better themselves and better their lives, you know that a simple and well-defined set of rules is important, and so is the ability to think long term. And there you've got it. And Dubai do seem to do that well, because they've bypassed the democratic system. They don't have it because families run it, and you can think well into the future. And they seem to be of the idea that, like you say, the merchants are the people coming to do the business are the ones you should be looking after. And we're looking back to the history now to see times when that's been the case before. A lot of governments say they're doing it. Every government in the world is saying, we welcome business, we welcome this, we welcome that. But that's all very well. But in 4 years' time, the new government might say something completely different.
Exactly. I find it concerning also, and I wouldn't want my business to be set up here. There is another thing that Dubai achieved with this approach, and that's attracting talent and high-performing individuals. And that's, of course, that's the amount of the immigrants from the West and the digital nomads and all kinds of industries and so on. But also then these low qualified workers from the third world, or so-called third world. And I traveled that world excessively, and I can compare 7 years ago. When I was traveling in Iraq, and I showed my Schengen passport, I got offered marriage, money for marriage at least twice a week. Now, when I wave my passport, people are actually sorry for me, and this is mind blowing. When this started happening to me, 1 year, 2 years ago, I couldn't believe it, and when you get into conversation with these people who are living in the middle of nowhere in Pakistan, they are not dreaming about going to the USA or European Union anymore. They are dreaming, very religious one, about Saudi Arabia, and the ones that like to party, they dream about Dubai. Dubai is often offended that how they treat these people and how they treat human rights and so on. But Dubai became a hub for feeding so many families in the third world. And you might be traveling. You don't have to be in Pakistan. You can go to Sri Lanka, which is Hinduist or Buddhist country. It depends on which part you are in. And their sheikh, Dubai sheikh, is a superstar for them. It's like really the people are like fascinated by the stories of Dubai, and you can see this pattern. If someone can drive properly, that's first sign. And second sign, if someone has a decent home or better standard of living, either they've worked in Dubai or like in the Middle East, or they have someone in the family who was working there in the past or is working there right now.
That's fascinating. Come on then, tell me about the geopolitical situation in the world currently from your perspective, because I've never heard that before. That's an interesting observation, that people have started idolizing the Middle East now as a place to immigrate to.
Depends who you ask. If you ask in Germany, probably you will get like many.
Sure, but we're not like, we're talking about people bettering their lives, aren't we? And we have had that luxury in Europe and the UK and America of being the places that everyone wants to come. And obviously a lot of people still do want to come there. I think possibly that might have something to do with the social availability of benefits, yes, which is unfortunate really, because Dubai doesn't offer a single one.
Yeah, in Dubai you have to work or being kicked off in no time. So
that's fascinating, because that only attracts people that really want to make a go of it.
Who are really trying to improve their life, who are really like high performing, and that's like I say my high performing. We might be speaking about an analphabet from like middle of nowhere who will be giving you gas on the gas station, and you will tip him well because you don't have to go in that heat outside of the car. But that guy stood up and left that country to improve his life and improve the life of his family. And when I'm speaking about the people improving his life, I'm thinking of these people. I'm not speaking of like people like me or like digital nomads or like people who are seeking tax benefits. So it's just it's fascinating for me that we have this the European perception over these countries it's typically being very resentful, and but in fact I dare you employ a Pakistani here. Like if you want to support this kind of countries, try and go, or send money to Pakistan. Good luck with that. So from this perspective, actually Dubai and Emirates and even Saudi Arabia or Qatar are actually much more welcoming places than we are. So what Europe is doing is virtue signaling, while So this is another fascinating aspect of Dubai.
What do you think's going on in Europe then? And when I say Europe, I kind of mean England and the UK as well. I mean the continent, sort of a Europe, because in one respect, it does seem like the centralization of the bureaucratic system, the power, is really starting to screw things up. But a lot of people still love it. A lot of people still think it's a good idea. You look at all the countries surrounding Europe; they all seem to want to join the EU. It seems to be something that's still, I don't know. Like, what's your view? You're kind of in Europe yourself. I'm not even in Europe anymore.
When I'm in Europe, it feels like I can't breathe anymore. As you probably understood by now, I'm quite like, how to put it, strict with my views. I'm not really, I don't leave a lot of place for contemplation, given certain things. And in Europe, I used to say that I love to leave Europe to, I call it out of Schengen, anywhere out of Schengen, because that's where I feel like I can breathe. And that's, for me, that's connected with the general perception in society. Like people are, in these countries that are not so developed, people are closer to one another. People are more open. Money talks. You need something. You don't need paper. You need find someone who can help you to solve your problem, and will proudly do so for some bucks. Here it's impossible anymore. And so I love the free commerce thriving. I love the communities thriving, because you have still the feelings of community. And I think if you're living in that, you don't value it that much. Then free healthcare that sucks, or free education that sucks.
Free in inverted commas.
Free. Yeah,
I mean, not free, is it?
Of course,
you pay for it.
So I can understand. I can understand the perception of these countries and the citizens of these countries that they would like to join. And inherently, I have nothing against it. I mean, I have nothing against democracy. I have nothing against any kind of organization of the society you can think of. What I consider alarming is the fact that it's increasingly hard to opt out. That you were unfortunate to be born, or fortunate enough to be born in some kind of white border on a like inside a circle of a map, and you either won a jackpot or lost the jackpot, but your destiny should be predetermined. And this is, for me, this is very this is troubling idea. And I also think it's very dangerous for the society itself, because what you can't do today is experimenting. I don't know which system is the best. I don't know. I would love to find out. I would like to see more experiments. I would like to see, but it's next to impossible to have these done, given the policies and given how the countries what road they have taken. So, well, I don't want to sound like I'm completely against Czech government. I would like to have it overthrown tomorrow, or in the end of the day, any kind of government. I don't care. I don't care about any government. I don't care about where West is going or not going. But I care about having the option to experiment, to live, to stay, to arrive somewhere. And most of the world does not have that, and it's the trend is not actually looking well in this regard. So that's my problem.
Well, the trend is, and it's a funny trend. Well, I know the trend in Europe obviously is democracy, and if you even say a bad word against the democracy, it's heresy, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
And I've been on a long journey with the concept of democracy, I must admit. I was someone a while ago, even a few years ago, who thought this is the pinnacle of human governance. This is so fair and perfect, and but it's taken a couple of years of speaking to people with different views to realise that it's not the ideal system in the slightest, and in fact, it's actually relatively bad in its current form, at least.
From my perspective, I think democracy might make sense. It might make a lot of sense if the people who decided willingly that they want to participate have the ability to opt out, and if they share the same interests, they have the same incentives. So, for example, when it comes to voting about my apartment building, I would be there and I would be voting, and I would run the campaign to, if we were choosing in between a parking lot or a garden in my inner yard, I would be there and I would be very much participating. But, there's having democracy among 10 million people that have nothing in common doesn't make any sense. It's just
Well, it also doesn't make sense in the sense a turning point for me was when someone said, look, imagine the democratic system with products that you buy. You buy an Apple phone. You don't expect to be voting on, the way Apple runs the company. You just buy the product because you like it. But if you don't like it, you can buy a Samsung phone. You don't have to buy the Apple phone, and that's the problem. We have this system, which is currently, like I say, it's a taboo to not agree with it, and as a result, most people don't question it at all and just expect that that's the way it would be. But it's not serving. It's serving the minority, really, when you actually break it down. It doesn't even serve the majority, according to
exactly.
Which is a crazy idea. Have you ever come across on your travels any other situations where you've seen something interesting way of operating that we might not have heard about? I mean, it's not common. I agree with you that democracy is about scale, isn't it? Democracy works really well when it's in smaller pockets of humans, like, where there's a decision that needs being made. But once you scale it up to, well, the size of Europe, it's ridiculous. I mean, I've just driven across Europe. Every place you go is completely different.
Yeah.
Different people, different houses, different ideas. Why would you expect that people in, northwest France would agree with what people in Croatia think or whatever? It's
it's ridiculous to think of. Then you see these campaigns in Brussels,
or like the worst one is these bloody bottle tops.
That's pinnacle of European innovation.
I just bought a bottle of milk here and it did the same thing. It's really weird, but the same thing happened in Croatia. Now I'm here, the same thing's happening, and it's like, who decided that, really? Who decided that? Like, have you ever seen bottle tops all over the floor? Like, do they exist on the floor somewhere?
I don't know. It's
why do we have to keep them attached to the bottle now?
7 times a day when I'm opening something, I'm asking this question. Like, is this what we are innovating? Really? Pinnacle.
What's the alternative then? In what would be the right way to do it according to you?
As I said, I don't know the right way. I would welcome the opportunity to be able to experiment, and then, these experiments being able to compete with each other. That's what I would welcome. But that being said, I must say that I'm optimistic. If we could ever get to this place, I'm very optimistic. When I was traveling, as you asked me about those travels, one thing that really struck me, I've been to many places where state failed, really like war zones and so on. So state failed big time. What was fascinating for me is that, like, life, even if in the worst places imaginable, was thriving, and if there was no one else to do something for people, well, they did it themselves. They found a way, or there was an entrepreneur who actually provided the solution. So I'm very optimistic that once we allow this, once we allow the commerce, then that's actually the inhibitor of life and making life better for anyone participating.
Don't you think, though, that most people want a state? Most people want a state, I think, but because most people want a leader or they don't really necessarily want to be. This is my conclusion, anyway, of people, and it's very natural to. It's very natural to be in a minority of people that really want the freedom to take responsibility for their own lives. The majority of people don't actually want that, and that's why you see the system arising that we have now. You only find pockets of places where government decides to be small and to allow people to do what they want to do. When you were talking about war zones, I was thinking of places like Lebanon, where there is pretty much kind of no government.
Yeah.
And for example, if the electricity company doesn't work anymore, no one can get electricity, and over a period of 6 months, you see solar panels springing up everywhere on people's roofs. They're going out, they're sourcing panels, they're buying them, they're generating their own electricity. It's very entrepreneurial, like you say. Argentina was the same. Maybe that's what's required. Like
a tragedy to happen.
But think about what incentive is there for the democratic system to relinquish its hold? Right? I
mean, usually you get to these situations through crisis, and these crises are not pleasant. That's unfortunate. I think everyone who looks realistically at the current system knows that this is not. It's not possible to maintain long term. Like, it's not. It will have to collapse or get reformed dramatically. Well, that rarely happens.
I mean, you could say Dubai kind of had a crisis, but Dubai was just like, no one's coming here. That's their crisis. But it's not that anything collapsed. But you do need a strong incentive to change, for sure.
Yeah, and then Dubai had also other crises. I think it was also like 2012 12 it was when they like overborrowed and so on. They had these lessons and they learned from them. So, and I hope that we could learn our lessons, but it's very hard if the people who are ruling don't have any skin in the game. So it's there is no feedback, happening. That it's like,
well, the feedback is the political cycle and being able to be, ousted after 4 years. But that doesn't actually affect the system in a positive way, because people run the system as if they're spending a short period of time looking after it. It's the worst.
It's not a good feedback, because the feedback cycle is 4 years long. Imagine it's like with COVID crisis, you could have seen that. You need very, very quick decisions that are often local, and you have this like Moloch, trying to respond to situations they are completely detached from. And that's very problematic. And if you have problem with the government and how they handled COVID, you can change it in 4 years. So it's like very, very, it doesn't make much sense to me.
Have you visited any sort of free city projects around the world on your travels? Honduras?
I've been to Honduras, but only mainland. So I would like to visit Prospera during my next winter travels. I haven't seen any. I've seen many.
Is that what you do? Settle down for summer and then travel in the winter?
Yeah.
Nice life.
Yeah, basically, because it's Prague.
When you say travel in the winter, do you mean go to one place or to do a few places?
I have like my tips. What I do, it's I go to one place that's usually well connected, and then I go and if I get sick of it, I just leave to another one. If I like it, I stay. So it's not really exactly planned. It's more or less I plan for the part of the world. So this time I've been to Argentina, which is like a huge part of the world. But before I was in north of the South America, or before I traveled through Central Europe. Central America. Yeah. So it's more like, area where I'm moving. Or I don't know. I went to Bangkok, stayed in Bangkok, and then I got sick of it. I went to Cambodia. So it's like, I'm trying to see as much as possible to see to be seen from like part of the world.
So sussing it out, trying to focus.
Yes.
Well, if it's any consolation, I've done that for many years, but I ended up settling in my home country. How bad is that?
Did you? Yeah. Were kids in
yes. And a wife. And a wife who has a family close.
I understand.
I think for me, my family doesn't have to be close to me, actually. It doesn't. I'm not bothered if they're not close. But my wife, she prefers to see her mother. And
I understand.
Especially when you have young kids, the urge to be able to use your close
social
families.
circle.
Yeah. And that is one of the problems I see with the whole flag theory situation. I get it when you're young or when you're single or you're free or whatever, but there needs to be an innovation for families, I think. There really does. Because the cycle that you can see would be something like this. So a country becomes competitive. It attracts families. The families stay. Now, once a family stays, normally they probably stay longer than someone else. The longer they stay, the less competitive the government needs to be. So you end up with this cycle, don't you? It's it probably is. That's probably what's going to happen. I mean, even in somewhere like Dubai, maybe they'll stop innovating at some point, because they'll realize, even now, I think Dubai really, if it did, like, for example, if they brought in a 20% tax, I think people would get up and go, quite a few people. Right. But imagine in another 40 years when the people that are there now have got families, they've got community, it's less likely to happen. And I think, we were talking about this the other day, about the, Americans, many years ago complaining about 2% tax. This was a big deal. But now people are sitting on 30-40% tax and not really giving a shit. And that's because the barrier to leave and the barrier to entry is much, much, much harder. And the government doesn't need to be competitive anymore, you know.
I mean, Dubai, especially because of its demographics. Well, it's it's rare to move there with a family. 85% or 80% of the population are people who come to work there and then they leave back to their family. So that's a different model. But I totally agree that yes, this I would also look for disruption in this, like modus operandi for families, because actually, I cannot quite imagine having this kind of lifestyle. Well, like, I don't want to be dragging a kid around the world. Maybe if it's a baby, that's different. But if it's a 6-year-old and you stay somewhere for 3 months and it builds social circle. You don't, like, do you want to just be cutting this every 3 months, not to become tax resident somewhere?
Then again, someone did point this out previously on this podcast that 100 years ago, moving from Prague to the other side of the country was a big deal. And then, or even moving out of your village 100 years ago was probably quite a big deal. But now, you know, moving from Prague to, France, not a big deal anymore. And now we're at this point where people literally move regularly to the complete opposite side of the world. So that kind of modus operandi is changing. I think there is much more of an understanding now that it's normal to do that. And one of the things that a lot of free cities people talk about is a network of free cities, for example. So you would take residency in, say, Prospera. Prospera had 20 cities around the world. Your Prospera passport would allow you to travel between them, and the travel between them would be very, very well defined. You know, might even be a simple 2-day boat trip, I don't know, from Honduras to somewhere else. And that might actually solve that problem a little bit. I don't know how you solve it, like really solve it, because you basically have to bring all your connections with you otherwise, right? What
you're describing, that would be a wet dream. That would be a wet dream, but very hard to accomplish.
Why?
Because, look,
let me tell you why I don't think it's hard to accomplish. Because cruise liners already do it. Cruise liners have a flag.
I know.
And they travel around and they go from port to port, but they take their flag with them. Why wouldn't you have free ports all around the world, which were privately run with, and as long as you don't, if you're in a boat, for example, and you just dock at these free ports, you're not touching any other nations anyway. You know?
That's one concept that is interesting for sure. But my problem with cruise ship is something different. But generally, having cities, I'm not that optimistic, because usually they are in the area that belongs to someone, and even the parts of the world that decided to start settlements somewhere in a land that did not belong to anyone, and some kind of terra nullius, it didn't end up well. That's what we learned. So why I'm not optimistic, or why I would be concerned to start such project, is because the counterpart is state, and you don't have many smart governments in the world that would see this as an opportunity for amazing collaboration, the special economic zones, but they would see it as a threat or competition.
Agreed. And that, I think, is why the most proficient free city projects are dealing directly with the government and not trying for autonomy. I think autonomy, not complete autonomy at least, but who's to say that doesn't just evolve? Like, I see no reason why a free zone in Dubai, I mean, Dubai is like, it's like hundreds of free zones, but the whole thing's a kind of free zone now, isn't it? It's like, you know, they've used free zones to innovate, but actually now the whole place is just absorbing these ideas. And then you just go to Dubai now. You don't go to a free zone in Dubai. You just think, I'm going to go and relocate to Dubai, or go and live here, or go and live there. So why wouldn't something like that evolve over 50 to 100 years anywhere, and just outcompete the state?
That would be amazing.
Well, I think
that would be great.
I think that is the idea. That's what Free Cities people believe will happen. As a network of hundreds of thousands of competing places all around the world, run privately.
If I could get this service, I would be. Just take my money. Where can I pay? Where can I sign?
Well, look, I think it's a long-term strategy, unfortunately. But I think now is the time, because we now have the internet has changed everything. This connectivity the internet's given, and when you marry that with the connectivity that you get with technology and planes and mobility, yeah. There's no reason why now isn't the time. And there are so many entrepreneurs thinking about these thoughts now. I mean, 5 years ago, people didn't even think about this kind of stuff. I really don't think so. It's like this is the beginning of all this stuff. And places like Dubai have done a version of it, and it works. It shows you can test all the theories. Like people that say, without a, social network, without what's it called? Social security, we call it, where you give free healthcare. Free healthcare is great, but we can see now in a place that doesn't have social welfare, people come and just work hard.
They don't. They're not dying on the streets.
Exactly. Well, it's the opposite. In fact, they're literally the standard of. So we can see that these theories seem to work pretty well, and the only problem is that the system we have in Europe is spoilt, and fat bureaucrats are gorging on it themselves
and getting fatter and fatter,
and they have they don't necessarily have a reason to change, because they're self-indulgent. They're not looking for the best for everyone. They're looking for the best for themselves, and the democratic system suits bureaucrats very well. It's a job, and they can change jobs quite easily, and so. But I actually think that Bitcoin plays a role in it all, because it helps to incentivize the state to work harder as well. I mean, one of the reasons the state in its current form can thrive as it is because of central banks and the ability to basically create money to fund itself in a roundabout way. And I mean, obviously, way in the future at some point under a Bitcoin standard, this would be something that wouldn't be as easy to do. It would be impossible to do. So the only option they have is to try and add value. If they want to stay as large as they are, they need to work and add value. So I don't know. I think the fact that the ideas are in the air now, and that there are things like Bitcoin which may disrupt the whole system, the whole corrupt financial system. I think that those all things together lead to that future. I don't see where else they can lead.
I agree. I tend to agree. It definitely can lead to this future in the cyberspace. I wish it will also lead to this this development also in the mid space and in the space of
real
physical real life, exactly.
What, you're worried about the restrictions on travel?
Not only restrictions on travel, but just really today try to leave Germany. It's not only restriction on travel, it's the cost of it. I'm just afraid it's going to be crazily expensive. I'm not that worried that there wouldn't be places to live too, because there are so many countries in the world that are realizing they are great. They have a lot to offer. They have a lot to market, and they have to have their space at the table. Go to Albania. How many commercials for health tourism are you going to see in Albania? I went to a dentist there, and I've never have I ever in my life gotten a better care for a dental thing than I got in Albania. And you have these countries which you wouldn't visit or wouldn't think of on the first sight or first when you first heard of them, but they are starting to realize they have a lot to offer, and they might actually earn money on it. And so I'm not worried that there wouldn't be places to live to. I'm worried it will be increasingly hard.
Fair enough. I think my counter argument would be that there is a natural response to what you're talking about, and this is it. So the harder it is to leave a country, the more people will try to leave. It's as simple as that. And the result is the Berlin Wall fail. It comes down in the end.
That's true. Actually, yeah. From this perspective, you are quite right.
I hope so. Anyway, well, look, Lea, we've been talking for a long time. Thanks for coming in. Really enjoyed talking to you. I love your stories, and good luck finding your place in the world. Then, wherever it might be.
Thank you very much for inviting me.